History remembers Napoleon as a contradiction. To some, he was a military genius who brought order to chaos. To others, a tyrant who plunged Europe into endless war. But the real story is more complicated and more revealing than either version. Napoleon Bonaparte did not rise from stability. He rose from revolution. The French Revolution had shattered the monarchy, executed a king, and destabilized the entire nation. Political factions fought one another. Governments rose and fell rapidly. Violence was common, the promise of liberty was drowning in uncertainty. In that atmosphere of instability, Napoleon saw opportunity. He was not French aristocracy. He was born in Corsica, an outsider with ambition and discipline. As an artillery officer, he distinguished himself not through noble birth, but through calculation and precision. He understood strategy and something even more important, perception. His early campaigns in Italy made him famous. His soldiers adored him. His enemies underestimated him. But perhaps his greatest weapon wasn't artillery. It was narrative. Napoleon wrote detailed accounts of his victories, carefully shaping public opinion in Paris. Newspapers amplified his image. Artists painted him heroically crossing mountains, even when the real crossing was far less dramatic. He built a legend while still alive. In 1799, as France's government faltered again, Napoleon executed a coup, the coup of 18 Brumaire. He dissolved the existing system and positioned himself as first consul. Within 5 years, he crowned himself emperor. Not crowned by the Pope, not crowned by tradition. He placed the crown on his own head. That single act symbolized his transformation from revolutionary general to ruler. And here lies the first dark truth. Napoleon claimed to protect the ideals of the revolution, equality, secular law, meritocracy, but he concentrated power in himself. He centralized authority. He controlled the press. Political opposition narrowed. France traded instability for order, and order for authoritarian rule. Yet Napoleon was not simply a dictator hungry for control. He reformed France. He created the Napoleonic Code, which standardized laws and reinforced equality before the law. Feudal privileges were dismantled. Administrative efficiency improved. Education systems were strengthened. In many ways, he modernized the state. But he did so while waging near-constant war. Across Europe, his campaigns redrew borders. Empires trembled. Nations fell. Millions died in battles from Spain to Russia. What began as revolutionary defense became expansionist ambition. And ambition rarely stops on its own. By 1812, Napoleon dominated much of Europe. But domination breeds resistance. Britain remained defiant. Russia resisted economic pressure from Napoleon's continental system, an attempt to cripple British trade. So Napoleon made a decision that would define his legacy. He invaded Russia. It was not merely a military error, it was overreach. The Russian army avoided decisive battle, retreating deeper into the country while burning supplies behind them. Napoleon advanced into emptiness. Winter arrived. Temperatures plummeted. Starvation and disease spread through his ranks. Of the hundreds of thousands who entered Russia, only a fraction returned. The myth of invincibility collapsed in the snow. His enemies sensed weakness. Coalitions formed. France could not sustain the strain. In 1814, Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to Elba. For most rulers, exile would end the story. But Napoleon escaped. He returned to France, and astonishingly, much of the army rallied behind him. For 100 days, he regained power. It was a final surge of ambition against reality. It ended at Waterloo. This time, there was no second chance. He was exiled again to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic. Far from Europe, far from power. There, isolated and under British supervision, he reflected on his life. He dictated memoirs, shaping his own legacy once more. Even in defeat, he controlled the narrative. He died in 1821, and here is the deeper truth rarely emphasized. Napoleon was not simply a conqueror. He was a symptom of institutional collapse. The French Revolution destabilized an old order but failed to create a stable new one. In that vacuum, a charismatic and disciplined leader rose. People accepted concentrated power because it promised security. Napoleon did not invent that dynamic. He mastered it. He modernized law. He spread reform. He inspired nationalism across Europe. But he also normalized rule by force. His empire reshaped Europe, yet it could not sustain itself without constant expansion. And that may be the darkest truth of all. Power built on perpetual ambition eventually consumes itself. Napoleon rose because systems were weak.
He ruled because fear of chaos was stronger than fear of authority.
And he fell because even brilliance cannot outmaneuver limits forever. If this changed how you see Napoleon, imagine what history textbooks leave out about other world leaders. Subscribe to the History Vault and join a growing community that looks beyond the legend. We uncover the turning points most people never question. Don't just watch history, understand it.